Hello, it's Mike here again. This is the second part of the first video that we're doing about the I think it's 407, isn't it? Is it? Yeah. HGP 407A, the Bruiser Clone. I've had now a proper good look through the instruction manual and the actual kit itself. Last time we went, literally it was an unboxing, having a look through and seeing what was there and so on and so forth, and yeah, it was pretty good. After spending a couple of hours on it, or more than a couple of hours on it, I do have one or two things that I have noticed, seen, and are not very good. So it's going to need looking at and going through. And also, I'll hopefully be going over some of the things that I've done to improve certain things and fix them, shall we say. Right, so the first thing we'll get into on this one, the bearing issue. And yes, it is true, they are awful. I've at least got one bearing so far which was C solid, and the other one is rusted, pitted, and looks as though it's been used as a skateboard bearing as the actual wheel. Also, we'll be looking at the shocks today and have, well, put some oil in them for a start, because they did come with absolutely no oil whatsoever, and what I've done to make them work to a point. No, they weren't. Yeah, they were awful. That's another evening of my life I will never be getting back. So yeah, we'll be going over that and what I've done, and if it helps anyone else, then brilliant. Also going to point out that the lockable diff system, things to look out for. So right, let's get into it. So first we're going to have a look at the differential and what was right and what was wrong about it, mainly what was wrong about it. Then we're going to be having a look at the damper units and yeah, how they were stripped down and rebuilt from completely the beginning, and some ideas on tips for modifying and what I'm going to do to make this thing work, and also other little pointers hopefully. Right, so let's get on with it. So first thing, as I said in the last video, if you get the chance, strip the vehicle down, the parts, components, go through them and check them out. I'm glad I did with this one, because I have noticed a few minor problems and some potential issues. First one being the bearing for the input side here, the pinion gear and crown gear here. The two bearings which are mounted in these sections here, this is the back one. It goes into there, that's the one closest. That was actually seized, so it was just literally sliding round in the casing. The shield, the bearing, has actually been, what looks like it's been pushed in all the way around, on both sides. They're both damaged. So yeah, that was a very second-hand bearing. I mean, at a stretch you could pop the shields out, and but you know, you shouldn't have to. I get the, I get it that they're cheap bearings, but these ones look as though they've been used, not cheap. This has actually got surface corrosion on it, and looks as though it has actually been used as a skateboard, as the wheel. It is awful. Yeah, that bearing is not good at all. Now I'm going to be replacing these with shielded on the output sides, and on the input side bearings they're going to be replaced with shielded. Now, one thing I have noticed on this lockable diff situation is you've got to be careful. On the top here you've got the grub screw. You remove that and then you get the pin. This is the grub screw pin. It is literally the top half is a grub screw and the bottom half is is the pin, and it's all one component, all one part. That's obviously a lot narrower. That gets removed. You slide that through the casing, and it goes onto the differential. Now this is the bit you've got to be careful of. It's a blind hole, so you can't see what's in there, but there is a specific way of putting this grub screw and pin in. Now if you look at the differential itself, the output side, this side, you'll see a raised portion here, and under there it's just flat. Well, there's the hole where it goes through. Now this raised portion has got the threads in there, so that's got to go into that hole and then screw through until it's flush. So that pin should pop all the way through. Now the axle itself goes into there, and it's got a hole in the axle, and that's how it locks the diff. So if you put it in and it's sticking out like that, it's going to rub on the inside of the casing, the top portion of the inside, you know, in there, and you're going to shear that pin off or do some damage. So that's something to be aware of. Right, that's the output shaft that goes into there, and that's the hole that the pin goes through. Obviously without that it acts like a normal differential. Now on the output of the shaft you've got small bearing. That's the one that's going to be replaced with the shielded, and what goes on the end of that is the hub itself for mounting the wheel on. Now this has got a bearing also. Now, the bearing goes onto there, and then that hub goes on like that. This is awful. I mean, that bearing is meant to sort of sit quite snugly into this hub, and it doesn't. It wobbles around like a witch's prestigio. That definitely needs looking at. So either some potentially bearing fit thread lock in there, or it might need, in extreme cases, maybe even machining, put a ringing in, maybe put a ring in or something. But that's definitely going to need looking at, because yeah, it's not great. I mean, at a pinch, if you tighten that up, it's probably going to push against the bearing to stop some play, but not what you call engineering excellence. Right, onto the dampers. Well, I say dampers, spring retainers more like. These leak themselves to death. So the first thing I do was strip them all down, clean them up, and then take them apart to see how they were made inside. Now the damper oil that you get in the set is like treacle. It's quite nasty. I did rebuild one of these and filled it up with the damper oil that you get with it, and it's rock solid. No, not so much damping as sort of an iron bar. So I have replaced the oil with that with some thinner viscosity. Lo and behold, this one's Tamiya oil. Hell of a difference. This actually now works as a damper, which is nice. Right, the way this thing was put together was there was a single O-ring in the bottom, followed by a plastic shield and a metal washer. I've removed all of that. I've got myself some new O-rings, which are a fraction bigger than the ones that came in the kit. Now these came with two sizes. On the copper piston, which goes into the top, they'd put some even smaller O-rings on it, and they didn't even seal the sides. So the oil was going up round the sides into the top chamber and then leaking out the top. And the bottom one with a slightly bigger O-ring, but still that just wobbled around in there, and it didn't seal it, so it would leak. So like I say again, I've replaced it with some new ones. Now these are the ones that you can find in Tamiya kits for their damper sets. They're fractional bigger than the ones you get in this kit. So instead of all that gubbins in the bottom, I replaced the bottom ones with 2 O-rings in the bottom and a very thin O-ring which I've stretched over the top, which you can see there. That's for the cap. So 2 new bearings, two new O-rings, a third O-ring around the lip, and then that was screwed together. For the top, similar concept. Removed the original O-ring, put some bigger and fatter ones in. Now these are a bit of a swine to get into the top of the cylinder. You have to be mindful of that, getting it in there. Now the major problem I've noticed with these damper units is they're almost copies of the Tamiya Hornet rear suspension unit. And what they've done is they've got this copper piston in the top with a spring which goes above that there. So that spring sits on top of the copper piston and that fits up in there. On the Tamiya one, there's a hole in the top of the copper piston which you put a machine screw through, and the idea being is when you've built at the bottom section, put the piston, put the rod through, you fill the thing up with oil, you put the copper piston in the top without the screw, and it allows the air to bleed through until you get the oil come through, and then you put it all together. You can't with these, so it means that when you fill the thing up with oil, you go to put the copper piston in the top, and there's so much back pressure it pops out. Not great. The way I've kind of managed to get this to work without obviously replacing these or machining them is build at the bottom section, fill it up to about almost 3/4 full, then push the piston in the top, build the top, bolt it all together, turn the thing upside down, then unscrew the top, pull the rubber O-rings out the top, push the piston up and down slowly to try and get as much air out as possible, and then feed in oil from the bottom. Then slide the rings back in, put the cap back on, and then test it. Now what I found was when you did that, it pretty much went solid or would only go down to about there. So what you do is you unscrew it, or pretty much almost take the thing off, push the piston down until you see it sort of bleed over and then round the sides, and then with a rag wipe the oil off and try and retighten the cap back on the bottom. Now when you tighten it up, try and get it up all the way to the top, pinch the O-ring but not so it's splurging out, but you want it quite tight so it's on that point of. The threading on this is not particularly great, and if it's halfway on or nearly on, with the pressure it'll actually pop it off, so you've got to make sure that's on there quite tight. So yeah, as I say, when you've let it bleed through, tighten it up, let it bleed through, push the cylinder down until it almost goes flush, so till about there, then tighten it up, and then that should be roughly about where you want it. I mean, that one's pretty good. If you feel any air or when you like a click or a bubble in there, just do it. You know, just go over the same technique. That's the way I've had a go at doing it. It kind of seems to work. Yes, there's probably other ways of doing it. These are an ongoing course, so I'm gonna potentially try some other ways of trying to put the thing in. Either that or get some of the Tamiya versions of the pistons to you know, remake them that way. So there we have it. That's as far as I've got so far. Been messing around with the suspension units and the rear differential and axles and things. Some of the problems that I've found, hopefully if I'm pointing them out, that it'll help someone down the line somewhere. So yeah, hopefully in the next one we'll be a little bit further along. Also in the next one we'll be looking at the chassis, hopefully, and gearbox. Hopefully they're going to be not as bad as this. I'm not saying it's majorly bad. It just means some hours of work needs putting in if you want it. I mean, to be honest with you, out of the box it'll probably work fine for a bit. This is more for longevity than anything else, especially with things like the bearings being seized. That cause problems further down the line, like wearing out the casing, the aluminium casing, or destroying the prop shafts or the drive shafts and things like that. So in doing it like this, the vehicle should last a lot longer. Usual stuff that Jake keeps on telling me, the whole subscribe, like yada yada sort of thing. I mean, come on people, YouTube's been out for donkeys now, you know what to do. But I've been Mike. I hope you enjoyed this, and ta-ra for now.